Namaste, welcome everyone. This is Hindu Lounge. Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact. Hindu Pact is the Hindu Policy Research and Advocacy Collective. Hindu Pact is an initiative of World Hindu Council of America, and Hindu Lounge comes live. We talk about contemporary American Hindu issues. I am Ajay Shah, and as always with me is Sudha Jagannathan. Sudha is a Hindu advocate, Hindu activist, and she does an amazing job on many issues. And I'm so glad that Sudha is partnering with me on this. So, Sudha, welcome.
Namaste. Thank you.
And Sudha, we have a really interesting topic today, right? We are going to talk about this survey, and I'm sure you have seen this survey. It came out. It is from NCRI, and NCRI is the Network uh, Contagion Research Institute. It is part of, in some ways, associated with or part of Rutgers University's Social Perception Lab, and they do a fantastic job. They're very deep research. They've done many studies. If you remember, they'd done a study on Hindu phobia about a year and a half ago, and this time now they've come up with this new survey, and this survey is called Instructing Animosity and How Pedagogy Produces the Hostile Attribution Bias. So, Sudha, what they're talking about here is that there is a way, there is the way you know the context is set, that itself ends up producing the bias on the people who are participating in the survey. So that's what I want to say about this, and I'll turn it over to you because I know you've done some deep research into this. So I'd like to hear from you what you have to say.
Well, what the NCRI study proves is that we were correct at all times. That the exposure to negative narratives about a people, particularly the Hindus, produces results that we have seen all across the United States with caste related legislations, policies added, abuses against everyday Hindus for just being who we are. So we already knew this, but this academic research proves that what we knew was correct. Because I have to say, it's sad that DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion studies, um, are so corrupted. DEI was supposed to provide an equal footing for everybody. But some I'm glad this is also coming into question because I think about 80% of employers in North America probably require employers to offer DEI training. Employees, it's mandated to take training, and but nobody has done any assessment of how effective are the DEI training,
Right,
right?
right.
Courses. So this is one of the first to look at three themes. I think they looked at race, religion, and caste, and we are going to focus today on caste because that is what impacts us the most. The religion and the race, there are other experts who will handle it.
Correct.
But I'm looking forward to this exchange.
So,
Your
Sudha, one
welcome.
thing that we should mention, right, that none of us, neither you nor I or anyone who belong to our organizations, none of us have any really uh, any problem as such with making a playing field fair and even for everyone. So we are not going to say that, oh, there is no discrimination in the society. We are not here to say that everyone is the society is just and fair. I think one of the great things about America is that you can start just about from anywhere. It's not about where you start from, but where you actually end up at. And does this society provide you opportunities to get to the place which is based on your abilities, based on your skills, based on your hard work, based on dedication to the work that you're doing? Does the society provide you enough opportunity to reach where you want to reach? And the very fact that all of us who are of Indian origin came from India is because we saw that in America, that here is a society that provides a equal playing ground for all of us. And today you can see Hindus have succeeded in all areas. It is not because Hindus were afforded some kind of a special treatment, but because it was sheer hard work that and their skills and ability and dedication to work, and a lot of personal sacrifices that led Hindus to their success.
Exactly.
So we are not against equality. We are not against affording people equal opportunity. We are definitely, we think that everyone should be treated fairly and equally. So I just wanted to kind of set that context, that we are talking here in really in terms of what is the best way to give people equal opportunity, so that they can progress, and it's not about really discriminating against someone or the other. Okay, so with that,
You put
uh,
it perfectly. I'll just say that complete 100% agreement. We are not standing for caste discrimination or any discrimination of any community or members of any community. But I also want to call out for anyone listening from India, we are not talking about caste in India. We are
correct,
talking about how the caste term is weaponized against the Hindu diaspora. And that is an extremely important topic we all should come to understand. And the labeling and someone defining us for what we are not is what we are fighting. Only a Hindu or let's say a Christian, a Muslim should be able to define himself or herself. No outsider should come in and label us and actually make it punishable crime,
correct.
right?
Yeah.
Being a Hindu, they were trying to make it a punishable crime. So that is what we are fighting about, and let's jump into it.
Yeah, and one thing I would, one thing I noticed in this survey is really, even this survey says that the goals of having an egalitarian, equitable society is really, everyone strives towards that, right? The problem is that are the DEI programs, especially as they pertain to Hindus, and because they're trying to single out Hindus, and we'll talk about that. But do if first, in general, overall, the survey says that the DEI programs, and a lot of other research have said that, and they quote research from Pollock et al. In 2021. It says the DEI programs not only fail to achieve their goals, but can actively undermine diversity efforts. Now that is about broader diversity, and we can do a different show on that, because, as you know, that our Hindu agenda for 2024 had a specific item about DEI itself. Today's focus is not DEI, as you correctly said. Today's focus is the attempt by some of the Hindu hating groups, such as Equality Labs, such as Hindus for Human Rights, ironically with the name Hindu in it, and Indian American Muslim Council and Sikhs for Justice, etc., who are trying to uh, you know, uh, propagate this caste narrative, caste discrimination narrative in America, where there is scientific surveys that show that there is no such thing, and their whole purpose is to kind of divide the Hindu society. B, they want to take away the opportunity for Hindus who are successful, and they want to make sure. C, they want to make sure that Hindu kids don't call them Hindus, because by calling themselves Hindus, they are deprived of any opportunity in the field of education or their chosen profession. And that is what, and it's purely, as you so correctly put it, is solely in context of America. It has nothing to do with India or any other country for that matter. Okay, so now back to you, and now you can take us through. I just wanted to have this long preface so everyone gets the context right on this, because the context matters.
Yeah. I have to say, DEI being diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Correct,
Equity means equal, not equal opportunity. It means equal outcomes. That is wrong. I think this is where DEI as a whole idea needs to relook at itself and reaffirm the things that they want to stand for. And the failure of DEI, as shown by this particular survey, a very groundbreaking survey, points to us that in I'll give you an example. When you work for a company, you in America, in Canada, North America, you are mandated to attend and take classes provided by the employer on uh, harassment, discrimination, etc.
correct,
It's a DEI offered program. One of our colleagues on the East Coast a year ago came to me and said, Sudhaji, I had a bad situation. My company mandated this training, and I, along with five or six others, they were all Indian origin. We were in this training, and the consultant hired to give us a training about a discrimination brought up this one example of caste system in India as the only example in America, not race, not gender, not the marginalization of blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, nothing, only caste discrimination of Hindus. So he said, what should I do? Excuse me, I'm getting over a bad cold.
Oh,
But
sorry to
so
hear
I
that.
said, oh, you should go to talk to your HR, explain to them that how this makes you feel excluded. And if the goal is to really say DEI inclusion, they are missing the mark on it by excluding you and your Indian friends. Actually, he said all of us felt embarrassed and humiliated in the class. So he did go talk to HR, and HR invited the consultant. And the HR said, I think you have a valid point. We shouldn't be shaming any of our employees. Maybe we should not use this example. The consultant disagreed. She said, no, this is our training and this is the way we will run it. So you can see what happens when an employee is required to take training, goes into the training, feels completely humiliated and excluded. That itself is like DEI has failed, right?
Absolutely.
By
Yeah,
not, yeah, DEI has failed. So it's very clear. I'm glad this assessment of DEI is happening, and it was sorely needed. And we have seen recently too, at universities, a lot of diversity programs brought qualified women into presidents of universities, but they many of them resigned because, again, I think it's a conflict of fairness,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Are our policies fair to all students, all employees, all faculty? They are failing because they already have their prejudices, and these prejudices are what we saw in this particular study. So I think it's a very big point we need to bring up.
Correct. So the one of the so there was a this all is started in maybe 2003 4, and I have a whole history that how it went from one of the international conferences, and then through the academic papers, and then it this it was eventually it made its way to some universities like Dartmouth and Brandeis. Especially Brandeis, I think, was the first university which said that caste should be considered a protected class. A protected class being a legal term for those who don't know. Protected class means that these are the class of people who would be, uh, who if there is any uh, discrimination of any kind, they would be afforded a special treatment. So it went to that uh, caste as a protected class uh, was approved at Brandeis University, and then it went, among other places. One of the first city councils which had the discussion was actually it was county in Santa Clara, was one of the first at a county level discussion, and then it didn't pass in Santa Clara, and then the discussion shifted to Seattle, and with Kshama Sawant being a council member in Seattle City Council, with a lot of help from again Indian American Muslim Council and Equality Lab, Hindus for Human Rights, they were able to pass this. It gained them a lot of money because it also came with a full-time position to monitor uh, quote unquote caste discrimination, where there's been not a single instance of caste discrimination that has been validated and proved in Seattle, but still they were able to allocate a whole full-time position. I guess City of Seattle has unlimited funds, and they don't mind wasting the taxpayers' funds to the detriment of the welfare of Hindus who live in Seattle. So that was the history, right? And now and then it went to, of course, the some of the universities, the Cal State system. It went to some other places. So that is the overall history. Um, so the
I
one
I
last
just want to say,
yeah,
go
please.
ahead,
No, no,
finish
no.
it.
I was just going to say that in all of this, one of the key players was Equality Labs. And Equality Labs, interestingly enough, most people don't know this, but it is not a non-profit. civil rights organization. It is a it's a company that offers training to corporations and to other places, right? So they offer this diversity and inclusion training, and I'm sure that training is not free. So they have a commercial interest in addition to being social warriors in their own minds. But really, it is, if you follow the money, they make their money out of offering this corporate training programs, or at least that's how it appears from their website, because otherwise they would be a 501c3 organization, and they are not a 501c3. And if you're not a 501c3, then you are a commercial entity. And it appears that they have vested interest in selling this training, because that makes them money. At least that's our guess. We haven't seen their books, but uh, you know they're definitely not non-profit. So now you say that, okay, if they're not non-profit, they're offering this training, so their self-interest is to make sure that this pot keeps boiling, right? All right, now all yours.
Okay, that was a point I wanted to make. The elephant in the room is equality labs. And I want to say social justice is a big issue, big theme in the United States, North America,
Yeah.
Canada, and the US, because young people feel very strongly about social justice, wanting to stand up for the underdog and fix problems, right? We are all for it too. But the biggest con artist today is equality labs, because they have figured out there's money in this business of caste, because you can weaponize it against the Hindu diaspora who's very successful, uh, very reputable community, and companies will pour money into the pockets of any social justice kind of an entity like con artist equality labs. And the equality labs executive director Tenmari Soundarajan, her claim to fame is that she comes from a Dalit background, but she was born and raised in Los Angeles. Nobody is born as a Dalit in America.
And
And if
in
you
an
look,
affluent family, right? She
yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
come from poverty.
yeah, no, her dad was a successful physician. He was a practicing Hindu. Apparently her mom was not, and she followed her mom's non-Hindu religion, and she has never claimed to be Hindu, but she wants to fix the Hindu community. But the thing is that she has claimed the mantle of civil rights, right? And if you go to Equality Labs website, at one point, I don't know if they still have it, they said they stand for Dalits, Adivasis, Sikhs, and Muslims. And Dalits, but not anywhere else, but in the US. And sounds like from one of the big cases they went after, they stood for the millionaire, billionaire Dalits. Okay? Remember that. They stand for millionaire Dalits. Adivasi, the only Adivasis I know in the North American space are the Native Americans. She doesn't stand for Native Americans. So who is this Adivasi she stands for? Then there are Sikhs and Muslims, and we know the fringe elements in the Muslim and Sikh communities in America align with her because they have a common goal. The goal is to target India through the Indian Hindu diaspora. That is the whole point. And like Ajay said, it's a money making business. So they have received money. There has been a lot of exposes. You can go check on YouTube. You'll see the exposes on where Equality Labs gets money from. Foundations fund their work under the guise of civil rights. But her team members get invited into via DEI into companies like Microsoft. I looked up one academician's background, and he has presented multiple times on cast at Microsoft. If Ajay or I try to call Microsoft DEI and say, "Hey, we are practicing Hindu Jain people. We want to come and talk about caste," they are not going to give us time of day, right? So she is from a privileged environment, privilege in the sense of having access and money into places of influence and power, whereas we are the ones without privilege. And she calls herself the representative for the underdog. And in the Santa Clara County Human Rights Commission's inquiry into caste, it was headed by a Catholic Christian missionary. I want to point that out. And he himself was under investigation for misbehavior, and he's trying to conduct a caste uh, policy enacted by the Human Rights Commission, which would have gone to Santa Clara County to be made effective as a legislation. But the students in the public hearing, the students who called in said, "I am from a privileged caste." Okay, so when I got my turn, I said every kid who called in and said they are from a privileged caste, they are privileged because of the hard work of their parents. They are privileged because the parents have provided them an affluent home and environment to grow up in. They have not earned that privilege, and there is nothing based on caste. Unless they go fall on their parents' feet and ask for apologies, they are not going to come to any good. I did say that. So it did not pass, but like you said, it went to Seattle and it was bulldozed through the city council by Shama Sawant. There are problems with people like Shama Sawant, and someone like Sunita Vishwanathan of for Human Rights. They claim a Hindu mantle. I'm not going to call out anybody's caste, it's not my business. But they claim this caste mantle. They say that they saw caste because their grandfather behaved in a certain way. Instead of punishing the grandfather or herself behaving well, they try to punish all Hindus. That is a problem with these policies. They do not target the perpetrators. We don't have any recorded perpetrators. We don't have any police reports. We don't have any human resources reports. We don't have university campus reports that caste discrimination has happened and it is rampant and violent.
And
Nothing.
Sudha, the only one where they actually had a lawsuit, like Cisco, it was totally debunked.
Yes, that was totally debunked. So maybe we should go into the survey.
So
So
let's
we
go into
I'll
the
talk
survey.
about
So let me set the stage for you.
yeah.
So this survey, I mean, I highlighted a few things in the survey so that our readers get the full context of the survey. So it starts out by saying that the prominent anti-oppressive pedagogy in DEI programs can carry perceived rhetorical threats for those whose politics or other beliefs run counter to the fundamental premise of the critical paradigm from which the pedagogy derives. Programming may reflexively cast members of so-called dominant group or those who disagree with them as anti-oppressive, anti-racist, or modern-day anti-fascist, framing as oppressive, racist, or fascist. So what basically they're saying is that the way these training programs are structured, they themselves induce the feeling or induce the training and induce the programming of people who are undergoing this training to and condition them into thinking that there is such a thing as dominant group, and people who don't agree with this dominant this narrative that they are presenting are anti-oppressive, anti-racist, uh, sorry, they become automatically become oppressive and racist and fascist just because they don't agree with the narrative that is being presented. And then the study here assesses the crucial question: do the ideas and rhetoric foundational to many DEI trainings foster pluralistic inclusiveness, or do they exacerbate the intergroup and interpersonal conflict? So, are these training courses that are being offered, like the one by Equality Lab, do they in themselves induce this hostility towards a member of a particular group? And they have a very interesting way of doing this survey. So what they've done, and I'll skip to right to their methodology. They created, they create something called a control text. They read to people, and then they give people a actual excerpt from one of the training, DEI training, and they did do that for general DEI, caste racism and things like that, white supremacy, racism, etc. And then they take the same methodology after validating it over there and they apply it to the caste narrative, and they see the similarities or differences. So that is in a nutshell the survey. So they want to see that when people are given a different, a different reading, maybe just three or four sentences, does that impact their training, or does that impact their thinking, uh, and does it bias them one way or the other. Right? It's very interesting. So they say that in order to examine the impact of oppressive training material on race, they conducted a study involving a few 423 undergraduates from Rutgers, and they basically wanted to see, so the control text is very innocuous, right? It just says America has just about 90 million planted trees of corn, and there's a reason people refer to the crop as yellow gold. It was worth $86 billion, and something about corn, right? And then they read the excerpt from training, uh, DEI training, and this is from Ibram X. Candy and Robert D'Angelo, and that says that white people raised in Western society are conditioned into white supremacist worldview. Racism is the norm; it is not unusual. It is not unusual, rather. As a result, interaction with the white people is at times so overwhelming, draining, and incomprehensible that it causes serious anguish to people of color. These are the two paragraphs that they so some people who fall under control, they're given the paragraph on corn. Other people are read this paragraph on white
White.
supremacy. And then they give an example. If you if you go down in the survey, they give an example of, just after reading either the anti-racist or the context. They just say a student applied to an elite East Coast university in fall of 2024. During the application process, he was interviewed by an admissions officer. Ultimately, the student's application was rejected. And it's very interesting. There's no mention of race, there's no mention of ethnicity, neither of the student nor of the admissions officer. And yet, people who read the people who read the norm context just say, oh, maybe the student was not qualified, maybe the admissions officer made a mistake, and you can read the survey on the website. But they gave a lot of reasons. But the people who were subjected to this DEI training, uh, they all thought that training the by 2 or 3 times the margin. They thought that there was a microaggression. The person who was admissions officer was being discriminatory. Uh, he was racist, and all kinds of other things that came out of that.
You
So
know,
yeah,
this
please comment on this. I just
So
wanted to
I
kind
just
of
want to
read this.
say that one it was exactly similar to the next one on religion and on caste. On the caste one, it said something about Raj Kumar. It was interviewed at a university by, I'm trying to remember the name of the guy who interviewed him. But it was a different. Rajkumar was interviewed by Anand somebody, okay, and the Rajkumar was rejected. The ones who read Equality Lab study said, oh, Rajkumar was a lower caste and the interviewer was an upper caste. And the interviewer had a caste bias, and that's why the candidate was rejected. Not only that, they wanted to punish the interviewer. In all three cases, the ones who read the corruptive narrative versus the bland narrative wanted to punish the interviewer for a very uh, unreal scenario, right? This is not even real, it's unreal, but they wanted to punish the person. As you can see the impact of this corrosive narrative on human beings. Everyday human beings are then going to be programmed to hate somebody. It's a terrifying prospect to think about companies or universities setting up DEI and brainwashing, tuning people to
Well,
hate.
you're so right, because this is how the oppressive regimes always keep people under their control. I mean, all through the history, keep people under control by programming them to think in a certain way. And this is exactly what Equality Lab is trying to do here. So now that you brought up this survey, I'll read you the excerpt from both the texts. The control text is again the same text about the corn, And sorry, in this case, sorry, the control text is about Jati and Varna. So the control text says Jati and Varna are concepts from India that describe ways people might identify and interact socially. Jati refers to groups with common characteristics, including clan, class, language, family, background, religion, region of origin, and occupation. Varna describes a philosophy in Hindu scripture of understanding human diversity and purpose. This is the control text. The Equality Lab excerpt says the following: Shudras and Dalits are caste oppressed. They experience profound injustices, including socioeconomic hardship and brutal violence at the hands of the castes. Dalits live in segregated ghettos, are banned from temples, and are denied access to schools and public amenities. The 2,500-year-old caste system is enforced by violence and maintained by one of the world's oldest, most persistent cultures. Okay, another name for Sanatan Dharma. I don't know if I'm sure you caught it. I don't know how many other people caught it. But after this, people read either the control text or people read the equality lab text. And then they're presented with the scenario that you just mentioned. Rajkumar applied to an elite East Coast university in fall of 2022. During the application process, he was interviewed by an admissions officer, Anand Prakash. Ultimately, Raj's application was rejected. Doesn't say what was Raj caste, doesn't say about Raj's religion. The same thing about Anand Prakash, because Anand Prakash can be a Christian, can be a Hindu, can be anyone, because it doesn't really involve name of either of the two names. Don't have name of God or goddess associated with it. So it is a very generic name. It could be anyone. The analysis, Sudhar, as you said, revealed that exposure to the Equality Lab intervention led to significantly higher perception of microaggression, perceived harm, and assumption of bias during the interview process. It increased to like 2, 3 times higher. And it is like in one case, it is increase of 32.5%, uh, increase in the perception of admissions officer being biased. And we don't even know who was what caste. The interview surveyors, I mean, we in the sense, the people who took the survey don't even know the caste of either of the two. They don't even know if either of the two, the admissions officer or the candidate, were qualified one way or the other. It doesn't say anything. And yet, people with just these two lines, people are brainwashed. What do you think about
Also,
that?
the study also switched the name. So in one situation, portion of the participants were told Anand Prakash interviewed for a job and Raj Kumar interviewed him. It didn't matter.
It didn't
The
matter.
interviewer with the equality labs poison, they all felt interviewer was upper caste, and the interviewee was a lower caste, and made all these assumptions of bias, microaggression. They were angry at the interviewer. They wanted the interviewer fired, punished. And I'll tell you how this played out in real life. In California, the Cisco caste lawsuit has been talked about worldwide as the proof for rampant abuse of caste amongst the Hindu diaspora. Well, nobody really pays attention to the fact that that caste case was withdrawn voluntarily by the California Civil Rights Department, which brought on the case on two defendants, Sundarayar and Romana Compella. That case fell apart because they couldn't, over 5 years of witch hunt trial against these two defendants, the California state CRD could not bring even one legitimate case
Correct.
proof that there's
Correct.
something had happened.
Yeah.
But the thing about the study, what they found out was that equality labs brainwashed people felt that the interviewer had to be punished. In the Cisco case, the world decided Sundarayar had to be punished. Sundarayar was the culprit. So in that case, the normal American way of looking at cases where you are not guilty until proven true, proven that you are guilty, didn't work. This
Didn't-
was like an innocent person who was alleged to do something was called guilty by everybody. And the Cisco case was used again and again and again in every situation. Even today, even though the Cisco case was withdrawn, the Equality Labs results were thrown out of the courts in Santa Clara as inadmissible. All of their so-called 40 Dalit women claiming rapes with not a single evidence of a report or specifics of what happened. She tried to peddle it everywhere. The only people who got this got accepted this were the gullible California legislature. Doesn't matter who was in the legislature. The assembly and the Senate approved. Let's pass this caste policy. And when we went and talked to 50, 60 lawmakers and the analysts who made the recommendation to the Senate committees, these analysts told me, we don't need proof, we don't need data. We can make bad law at any day, every day. That's how
Wow.
democracy works. Okay. They said, if you don't like it, go take it to court. Well, something really seriously wrong with all of this. And all of those California legislators had read Equality Lab St. Marie Soundararajan's trauma of caste, which I mean, anybody can write a story. I'm not going to comment on her specific story. I can only say that she was born in Los Angeles to affluent physician doctors. She went to Berkeley. She supposedly was an artist, then decided social justice was a better field and became a caste activist. She's very articulate. She has money and she has access into the highest levels of power and influence. Even at the World Bank, she went and presented and advised them that when they make grants or funding to any nation, they need to look at caste, right, as one of the
Yeah,
criteria.
yeah, yeah.
So who is privileged? Is it Equality Labs and Tenmari Soundarajan, or is it just people, everyday Hindus like me and Ajay? Who has privilege? We know Equality Labs has the privilege. And so this is why this whole topic is extremely relevant. That study says everything that we knew, but we couldn't convince other people because they felt like it's a Hindu speaking about it. The Hindu is already an oppressor and doesn't have, we cannot believe the Hindu. So we were already marginalized. And the California law would have put all Hindu, the 4 million or whatever numbers of Hindus we are in this country, would have put all of them in a perception jail of
Right.
being
And
of.
this is, I mean, it's unbelievable how people can get away with this kind of sprouting this kind of hate against Hindus. Because I don't
Yes.
think they can do this against any other religious community and get away with it. uh, because they Hindus are, by and large, people like us who have day jobs, who work, who balance life, family life, and advocacy, and who are law-abiding citizens, and we are here just doing our, doing hard work and contributing positively to the society. That these few activists can put out any narrative they want, brainwash people at the corporate level, brainwash the students, and get away with this kind of Hindu hatred and Hindu phobia. That's all it is, right? Because their whole stated, because in America, there's really, everyone should know this. We emphasize it again and again. In America, there's not a single successful prosecution of caste-based discrimination yet. And even if let's there are we have in previously we have in this show we have said how many the about 6 million people practicing Hindu dharma, then other people who practice dharmic practices, one of the other Sanatan Dharma practices. This, so the total number is millions and millions. Even if there are, let's say that tomorrow there's a handful of cases where it's inconceivable, but let's say they find an example of discrimination based on caste, let that person be prosecuted and let the law take its course. Why do you want to generalize it to millions and millions of Hindus who in America who have done nothing wrong? And so that then there's an interesting other slide that you have from this survey. Maybe you can explain this also to everyone.
Yeah. So after the first scenario of an individual being interviewed and the test of the bias in that happened, the survey went to another level of looking at Hitler's main Kampf and then taking references that he made on Jews, substituting the word Jew for Brahmin. Okay,
Okay.
and the results were even more startling and scary, and it should make every Hindu in North America sit up and take notice. Okay, we don't have time for chai and
Can you read
samosas,
this up?
friends.
Read this out loud so everyone
Yeah,
who cannot,
so
who is
let us
listening on the
let's
podcast, they can hear the, can see it.
yeah. So, similarly, when the participants who read the DEI inspired material looked at modified past statements from the German despot Adolf Hitler and his autobiography Mein Kampf that replaces the word Jew with Brahmin, they were more likely to agree that Brahmins were parasites by more than one third of the participants who said Brahmins were parasites or viruses and devil personified. And these impressions were from the experimental group who had received Equality Labs training. So the fact that they go through this DEI training using Equality Labs materials, and then they are imbued with this idea. Of course, Hindus are all oppressor, oppressed,
Right,
categories.
right.
All Hindus are oppressors, and only Dalit, Adivasi, Sikh, etc. are oppressed. That's according to Equality Labs. Beyond that, so called Brahmins are parasites, viruses, devil personified. What does that do to any Hindu kid growing up in America? Most of all, a lot of them don't know what their caste
Yeah,
is.
that is the ironic part, right? Most people, most Hindu kids growing up in America do not know what their caste is.
And even some of the first generation immigrants also don't know because
Yeah.
they didn't grow up with all of that. And now to say that all Hindus are oppressors, what Hindu kid would want to stand up and say, I am a Hindu, right?
And that is
This is
exactly Equality Labs,
exactly
and that
what.
is exactly what Indian American Muslim Council and FIA Kona and all of these groups
Yeah,
want
yeah.
to achieve, right?
Fiacona, let me explain to people who don't know what it is. Federation of Indian American Christians of North America. So when we say who is after the Hindus on caste, it is the Indian American Muslim Council. It's a federation of Indian American Christians. It is the Sikhs for Justice. It is Equality Labs who are non-Hindus. Okay, and we have a few others in the mix.
Yeah, Ambedkar
Dalit
King
Freedom.
Study Circle is one of them.
Dalit Dignity Network or something. They are
Ambedkar King
converted
Study Circle.
from Hinduism, and they feel
Yeah.
very strongly that Hindus must really pay a price for something. And I want to bring that into the context of how this played out with Sundaraya, because the CRD case immediately was all about punishing Sundaraya and Ramana Kompella. Sundaraya, 20 years ago, when he was at Stanford, he published a blog saying he doesn't believe in religion, right? He's irreligious. And he told the California Civil Rights Department that they didn't care. He said, no, you are a Hindu. As a Hindu, you have a caste. Your name is Iyer, so you are a Brahmin caste. And because you are a Brahmin, you are naturally oppressor. Okay, this is the California State Civil Rights Department claiming to assign a religion to Sundarayar, which is against the law, and to claim that because he is so called Brahmin, he is an oppressor. And who is oppressed? Supposedly a Dalit. But this Dalit was Sundarayar's collaborator, colleague at multiple startups. This Dalit guy is a millionaire, multi-millionaire. And this was the person's Equality Labs was trying to stand up and protect some abuse, which nothing was proven. The CRD could not prove a single iota of evidence or produce it, and they had to withdraw a case because the two defendants said you have drawn this out enough, and if you either you produce the goods on proof, or we are going to charge you for sanctions. All right, we are going to file a motion for sanction. CRD didn't want that. They said, oh, okay, we will withdraw and without prejudice, which means they cannot bring this case against those two people. And now let me point out why it's important for ordinary Hindus to understand. Not everybody is a Sundarayar or Ramana Kampalla who have had multiple startups and millions of dollars in your bank. If you are accused of caste discrimination, what will you do? Today, you might say, I don't practice it. I don't care about this. Let caste discrimination be a category. All right. Tomorrow, you are accused. What are you going to do? How many millions will you spend? Where will you find your legal team to
Really,
support you? You are helpless, Hindu. In North America, you are helpless. And if you don't stand up and fight these things, you are actually castigating your children into what is it, a jail in perpetuity. They will have to change their names to non-Indian names. Is that what you want? Or find your identity, stand up for our identity, and be proud of your identity. Fight for your rights as an equal citizen in America.
yeah,
That's my advice.
so well put, so well put. Absolutely, very passionately and well put. Because I think really people don't understand the gravity of this because it has not hit them. But these organizations have so much, hatred towards Hindu, and they sprout so much venom against Hindus that it's unbelievable for people who are doing their day-to-day jobs. They cannot even fathom what these people are doing to try and take the second and third generation Hindus and just kind of completely, uh, you know, separate them out from their ancestral culture. I mean, they are on frontal attack against our, 10,000-year-old tradition here.
One more thing I want to say, Ajay, is that Equality Lab's goal is not just to make money. They want affirmative action in the United
Oh
States.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
We know that the Supreme Court ruled against affirmative action.
correct.
It's not going to happen in the US, but Equality Labs wants it. They want a Dalit visa. So when you apply from India, none of us came here because of a Hindu visa. Nobody would give us a Hindu visa.
Yeah,
It is actually the Hindus are the only people who have always come here on merit, on their own passion for learning
yeah,
or working. Very rarely do we even come as refugees. It's only the Bangladeshi Hindus who are continuing to be abused,
yeah.
I want to point out.
Bangladesh or Afghanistan, those are the only.
Afghanistan, who have only, those are the only few people who have come here as refugees.
Yeah,
All other Hindus from 140 countries of the world come here on merit.
yeah,
And Equality Labs wants to change that by bringing in caste visa. Okay. Also, so know that there are multiple motives: money and the caste visa, and affirmative actions in everything, in jobs, in university, everything.
exactly.
And I fully oppose it.
Yeah.
America is built on merit,
And look, I mean,
meritocracy.
to me, I mean, it goes so much deeper because it's just it's job, it's culture, it's heritage, it's faith. I mean, why would you think that IMAC and Fiacona would be interested in this? Only because they clearly see that this is a way to, they see all these successful Hindus all around, and they say, okay, well, what makes them successful? Well, it is the historic kind of the you know. Uh, training that they have through their culture, through Sanatan Dharma, that teaches them the values of education, the value of hard work, the value of treating everyone fairly and equitably. These are the values that make Hindus unique and uniquely qualified to lead all the corporations and lead all the academic departments and institutions and everything else. So they say, okay, well, if you want to take this away from this set of people, let us go to the core of what makes them them, and that is the core Hindu Sanatan values. And so,
It's
how do you attack?
delegitimizing.
How do you attack? How do you basically destroy these people from inside? We take the second and third generation, you put them through a training like this, which now NCRI has proved is prejudice generating, not anything. It is actually prejudice generating, and so that they abandon their Sanatan values because they're afraid, uh, and then that's how you win. So that is exactly the plan that these people have hatched.
It goes beyond that. We know that Equality Labs have claimed that Holi, our festivals, attacks on our
Oh yeah,
festivals,
yeah,
Holi
Bully
is
against Hindutva.
casteist, because Holika is a Bahujan and her brother Hiranyakashipu is upper caste. How can a brother and sister be of different caste? Because their dad was Brahmin, Kashyap Muni, right?
And
And then the brother is a
he's a
king,
king.
and the sister is all of a sudden Bahujan. How does that happen? What it shows is complete moronic idiocy, okay, on the part of these people who peddle this junk. They don't know the ABCs of Hinduism. They have clobbed on to something some missionary has written. The pyramid. You turn the pyramid upside down.
Yeah,
Okay, you say, the majority of Hindus around the world are not upper caste. Majority of Hindus are everyday practicing Hindus and are not Brahmin.
yeah,
Okay, so first of all, let's flip all of that upside down for our children. Secondly, I want to ask our children a couple of things. One, you read trauma of caste, no problem, right? You look at how Hindus in the family treat each other. If you think they're mistreating somebody, call them out.
yeah,
But
absolutely. None of
you
us is for
don't go
discrimination.
home.
None of us is
You
for
do,
discrimination.
yeah, you do not go home because Equality Labs tells you go home, challenge your parents about their caste. If they don't apologize to you or admit they are upper caste oppressors, walk out of the family. How does that serve America trying to bring families together?
Yeah,
We are very well reputed to build strong families and strong
yes,
children.
yes.
Equality Labs and cohorts are trying to break it
No, they want
up.
to break the families apart.
We
That's
have
that.
had young students from college come home and challenge their parents and say, Appa, Amma, when are you going to atone for the sins of your ancestors? The
Yeah,
parents are like, what the heck are you talking about? I don't understand. The reason they don't understand is because the child herself or himself is thinking along the Abrahamic frame of work.
correct.
We do not have ancestral generational guilt. We have our individual karma.
Yeah,
My karma of my last birth, I don't know, but I'm carrying my karma. That's why I have a human life. I will carry on in the next birth if I am going to, if I have to expiate the karma. It's
right.
individual karma. So, what is missing in our Hindu families in the diaspora, even in India, is a complete disconnect with our dharma,
Yeah,
right? And are not understanding who we are. What is identity as a Hindu, right? A pluralistic, open, mutual respect. All of that is in there. Have we been bad? Occasionally, we have been very bad, but we have also evolved to correct that badness, kick out the badness. We have.
yeah,
Okay, so when Equality Lab says Dalits are oppressed, yes, Dalits oppression everywhere. But Dalits are not Hindus alone. There are Muslim Dalits, there are Christian Dalits. They are completely oppressed at all times, even after conversion. Let me tell you, you cannot imagine the so-called Dalit or a oppressed uh, whatever of a Muslim become the sheikh or the president of a Muslim country. Never happens. Same in a Christian environment. It took 2000 years before a Christian bishop was appointed recently.
Oh, so that is the actually that to them, what they are trying to do is they are saying that because uh, this kind of discrimination exists in Islamic and Christian communities in India, they are not being Hindu phobic. But we all know that is their argument, right? They have made this argument in multiple forums now, but we
Yeah,
all know that that is really not what they're saying, because once these laws pass, the
it's only for the Hindu.
only people who are going to be impacted is Hindus. So they
Why?
will,
Why? Let's address that. It is because you look at go check Merriam-Webster dictionary or Oxford dictionary.
yeah,
Look at the word caste. It'll come up. A Hindu hierarchical stratified society.
correct,
Why a Hindu? Why not a Muslim or Christian or Buddhist or anything else? Why not?
yeah,
Huh? It is always a Hindu. It's in the It's in the dictionaries.
So
It's in
just
the
to get the
curriculum.
law passed, they're going to pay lip service to this, and then they're going to turn around and say, "Look, but in American society, there's no discrimination against Muslims. There's Islamophobia, but nothing against Muslim based on caste." So basically, this is a way to break Hindu dharma. So that I want to go back to the survey and just conclude by giving some additional things that they found in the survey, right? And they said that the participant, you already talked about this in a very nice way. The participant exposed to anti-racist narratives or ostensibly anti-Islamophobia narratives perceived more injustice when there was no evidence of injustice than did those exposed to neutral scenarios. So they've already conditioned people to think that Islamophobia, anti-Islamophobia, Islamophobia exists. They don't even have to try anymore, or racism exists, right? And racism, at least in America, there is a historic context to it, but there's no real context to Islamophobia in America the way they are presenting it. It is, this is I see as much or as little Hindu phobia as I see Islamophobia. Um, when it comes to neutrality. And then, like in other studies, caste sensitivity training seems to engender divisive assumptions, encouraging more punitive responses. These results suggest that caste sensitivity training, along with training delivered with an anti-oppressive DEI framework, within an anti-oppressive DEI framework, may create hostile attribution biases that negatively distort perceptions of interpersonal interactions and promote rather than ameliorate the intergroup hostilities. Okay, so I'll read that part again. It's really important. These results suggest that caste sensitivity training, like the ones by Equality Lab, along with other training delivered within an anti oppressive DEI framework, may create hostile attribution biases. That means they bias the people who are taking the training, they make them more hostile towards people who they perceive to be oppressors, that negatively distort perceptions of interpersonal interaction and promote rather than ameliorate intergroup hostility. That means instead of achieving the purposes of DEI training, what it does is it actually increases the hostility between the group. And then it goes on to say that intervention may foster authoritarian mindsets, particularly when anti oppressive narratives exist within an ideological and vindictive monoculture. And then they say, if you go down, they say that uh, further create a culture of fear and rigidity instead of constructive changes. Create a culture of fear and rigidity instead of constructive changes. And so, finally, I would say that uh, you know they have identified this self and reinforcement process model for anti-oppressive DEI intervention. So they go over like these four things that uh, anti-oppressive intervention. So DEI training rooted in anti-oppressive rhetoric introduces narratives that lead people to assume that certain groups are inherent oppressors and others are inherent victims. No proof needed. Your last name, your first name will just decide that. Number two, increase racial suspicion. Exposure leads to hostility, or rather hostile attribution bias, causing participants to see discrimination when there is no evidence that discrimination has occurred. Authoritarian policing. This heightened suspicion triggers authoritarian policing tendency, leading people to endorse surveillance and purity testing,
Yeah.
strict social controls, etc. Then
So,
punitive retribution, just two more. Punitive retribution. Participants show greater support for extreme punitive measure against perceived, not real, perceived oppression as oppressors, as well as those seen as ideologically impure. So if you are a mainstream Hindu, then there's punitive retribution waiting for you. And finally, they say it calls for even more intervention. So, so the heightened punitive atmosphere leads back to demands of more anti-oppressive DEI training, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of suspicion and intolerance. So, this whole ecosystem. Now, please go ahead. I just wanted to
It
read
is
you and
so
then get.
scary.
You have such nice comments. I just wanted to give you set the stage for you to
It is so scary to listen to that. What it's saying is it's a vicious circle,
it is
right? They have a biased brainwashing ideology they bring in. They put you through mandatory training. You cannot escape it. You have to take it.
yeah,
If you oppose it, they'll say, oh, this is our training. We are the authority, and you don't get to say that this is wrong. It is our training. You take it, and then they add policy. So I'm going to call out these companies: Apple, IBM, Microsoft, Cisco Systems, okay, Airbnb, Salesforce. That's only a handful of companies that I've got. Many companies decided to jump on the bandwagon just to stay on the right side of what they thought was social justice. I'm going to demand these companies remove all caste mentions in their HR policies. It has no place in their HR policies as long as the dictionaries define caste as Hindu, academia claim caste as Hindu, and all public literature says caste as Hindu. You have no business putting the word caste in your HR policies. When you do that, you are condemning every Hindu in your global enterprise as an oppressor. Imagine the stress that a manager has knowing that this is in the HR policies. How is this person supposed to do his or her job to the best of his or her ability? It penalizes them if they make any decision, take any decisions, because it is always brought on that person that you did this because you are an oppressor, upper caste. That person has no uh, opportunity,
no
no
recourse, no
no
recourse.
recourse to correct it. So these companies must remove it. The universities trying to stay on the right side of social justice again, they have completely lost their minds. They need to remove all references to caste. Well, we will work with you to have caste discrimination really discussed when you remove all references to caste as Hindu everywhere in the global literature and the global dictionaries. Help us do that. Let's see if you have the guts to do it. I don't think they do. But lastly, I want to say one thing. Let me just bring up one example of what we are seeing across universities. Many times it's a Indian students coming from India to very elite universities in the US. These can be in the STEM area, very hard to get in to these places. So these are smart kids. They come to the US, they quickly catch on to the stupid narrative and decide, oh, I can be in the good books of these people and maybe I'll get a good job later on. I'm going to ask for a space to talk about caste. So the university DEI VP gets a request to put have a classroom discussion of caste, and it's only one or two students. A DEI person says we don't see the need for it. Then comes a letter signed by 30, 50 students. They are all from India. They are claiming to need a space to talk about caste. When so many students come, the DEI VP cannot say no. DEIVP says okay. And then the students set up a cast class, invites an equality labs cohort to come and speak and promote the idea of caste discrimination. The fact that these 30, 50 students, wherever they are, come into the United States is because they had good grades, right? They had qualifications to come into computer science, data science, or biotechnology, or whatever it is. They did not come here because they had affirmative action here. And did they have face problems in India? Okay, go fix it in India. Don't come
Yeah,
here.
don't
You
bring.
are actually causing harm when you bring your stupid ideas to North America. You're causing harm to Hindu diaspora like Ajay and me. We don't cause problems to anybody, but you are causing the problems to us. So I want to ask the Indian government to have these students sign a piece of paper that says they will not cause harm to the Hindu diaspora as long as they hold on to a student, Indian passport, or they have a student loan. Their loan is going to be contingent on behaving okay, fine. Do not engage in activities that are against the laws of the land, or against a community that doesn't harm them at all, right? And I'm very serious about this, because not all Indian students do this, but there is more and more evidence of these students doing it. And they're also at Rutgers, I don't know if you know, a new student group has been started to talk about caste.
Yes.
They are talking about caste in India, not about caste in the US. They're trying to connect the two and say, if there is caste in India, it has to be in the US. Although, I want to just point out one thing. Mr. William Dalrymple, who's not a favorite of Hindus because he doesn't care for Hindus, right? But his new book says, even though Indians went to the west, all the way to Egypt and Syria and Iraq and Europe, and to the east, to the Southeast Asia, there was no evidence that the caste followed them. He makes a special mention of that. We don't carry any baggage. We come here to make a good life, and we don't hurt or harm anybody, right? And so I am particularly offended when students from India come here to cause harm to me. Sahana Singh also mentioned she attended a university event put up by some Equality Labs brainwashed people. And when she brought up the case of Tulsi Das or Tukaram or something, they said, oh, they're not Hindus. So again, they are the authority. So there is something seriously wrong. I think the Hindu community needs to come together, train your children to do the right thing. The only good thing about all of this is, I want to say, a lot of Hindu kids are taking a gap year, going back to India to find their roots. And I'm very, very pleased to know that they're going back to reconnect, understand their identity, come back as confident Hindus. And they are now engaging with Hindu Pact or other organizations to stand and fight for our civil rights. This NCRI report, the director, Joel Finkelstein, says in the report, this is not about freedom of speech. This is about civil rights. So, civil rights means it's not just the civil rights of what Equality Labs calls as oppressed classes. It is the civil rights of people like me and Ajay and everybody who lives and have called this land as our homeland. It is our civil rights that they are trying to trample on. And I don't think we are going to give in to that. We are going to fight this to the very end of the day, end of our lifetimes.
Thank you very much, Sujata. They're very passionate, very passionately made points. I appreciate that. So, with that, we come to a conclusion of today's program. So, for everyone, this is Hindu Lounge. Thank you for joining. Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact. Hindu Pact is Hindu Policy Research and Advocacy Collective. It is an initiative of World Hindu Council of America. I'm Ajay Shah. I'm the president of World Hindu Council of America, or VHPA, and Sudha Jagannathan. She is the Hindu activist, Hindu advocate. And we will do this again, hopefully later this week, when we are going to talk about another really exciting project that we are working on. So stay tuned. There's more to come. Hindu Lounge, the episode number 138 is done, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you and namaste.
Thank you.